Noor, a weekly Quran study. We are continuing to journey in Surah Al-Mulk, and we are going to reflect on verse 5 onwards, inshallah, today. We had a homework. I don't know if any of you were able to look at, do the homework. We were going to look at the first 5 verses and try to see the connection between the 5th verse, if I'm right, between the 5th verse and the first 4 verses. Is there anybody who would like to share if you were able to reflect? You could also share during the discourse if you have anything. And so with that, we'll turn to Dr. Yamina to lead us in tonight's session. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you, Isra. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. So we stopped at Ayah 5 of Surah Al-Mulk, and it's our 5th week meeting together. So in this ayah we are told وَلَقَدْ زَيَّنَّا السَّمَاءَ الدُّنْيَا بِمَصَابِيحَ وَجَعَلْنَاهَا رُجُومًا لِلشَّيَاطِينِ وَأَعْتَدْنَا لَهُمْ عَذَابَ السَّعِيرِ. And indeed we have adorned the lowest or the nearest heaven with lamps and have made them rujum, meaning means of driving away Satans, and we have prepared for them the blazing punishment. So inshallah I will share with you what is usually said in commentaries about this ayah, generally speaking. Then I will share what I understood this week, reflecting on it, bi'idhnillah, and how it is relevant to us. That's always my question when I'm reading, is how is this relevant to us, in the sense that the ayah is speaking to us here and now and conveying a message to us personally, and a message that we can confirm, that we can say Sadaqallahu al-Azim at the end, that yes, God speaks the truth, this is the truth, that tasdeeq, confirmation. And also a message that weaves in with the rest of the surah, as far as we're concerned now, with the previous ayat, 4th ayat, and what comes immediately after too, inshallah. So first, let's look at the word rujum here, which is the plural of rajm, translated, I said, means of driving away Satan's, rujuman lishayatin. But I've looked at few translations and they said missiles. And a missile is an object that's propelled at a target. So the fact is that it is a means of driving away Satan, but there is also this meaning of there is a target, you're throwing something, targeting. There is a target point on the other side. And this, when we say rujum, rajm, the root rajama is usually associated with shaitan, and shaitan is called shaitan rajim. We say it all the time, A'udhu billahi min shaitan rajim, and it is an expression that appears in the Quran, often translated and rendered as accursed, but actually it means driven away. So there are a few passages in the Quran that I wanted to share with you, because it talks about shaitan rajim, but also in the context of the heavens being adorned, like in this 5th ayah of Surah Al-Mulk. So in Surah Al-Hijr, which is Surah 15, from ayah 16 to 18, we are told, and indeed we have set up in the heavens constellations and adorned them, the same word is used, وَزَيَّنَّاهَا لِلنَّاظِرِينَ, and adorned them for the onlookers. And we have protected them against every Satan outcast, every shaitan. وَحَفِظْنَاهَا مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْطَانٍ رَجِيمٍ. We protected them against every outcast or driven away Satan, except he who gains a hearing by stealth, and then a manifest flame pursues him. So there is something similar here. There is this flame, this shihab, that's understood, has been understood classically as alluding to meteors, or what we call, how are they called? Shooting stars. And this passage is understood as saying that God has made stars like arrows driving away the Satans. In another passage in the Quran, in Surah Al-Saffat, from it's Surah 37, from ayah 6, 7, and 8, we are told, Inna zayyana sama ad-dunya bi zinatil kawakib. So it starts with a similar expression than an expression similar to ayah 5. Behold, we have adorned the nearest heaven with the beauty of stars. So the word beauty is, or with the adornment of stars. It's repeated. Zayyana bizinati. وحفظنا min kulli shaytanin marid. And we have protected them against defiant Satan, every defiant Satan. And then we are told, so they cannot eavesdrop on the higher assembly, for they are repelled from all sides. So there is this, the heavens being adorned, the star with stars, with lamps, with constellations, and Satan or Satans being repelled, being driven away. And in Safat, in this particular passage, they are trying to listen, but in a sly way or in a secretive way. In Fussilat, which is ayah 41, in ayah 12, we are also told, and he decreed that they be 7 heavens in 2 days, or in 2 aeons, because day in Arabic has a connotation of period as well, and revealed to each heaven its function. And we adorned the lowest heaven with lamps, exactly the same, وَزَيَّنَّا السَّمَاءَ الدُّنْيَا بِمَصَابِيحِ, and a guard that is the decree of the Almighty, the All-Knowing. So there is a connection between these elements. There are other passages in the Quran as well. And so when I am telling you what the commentators, the classical commentaries on this passage, on ayah 5 is, they are not only looking at this ayah, they are also taking into consideration other parts in the Quran where similar expressions are used. And so I'm not going to go into the details, but just so that you know that it's a more comprehensive process than what that the non-professional may assume. And so we are told in the classical view that God has beautified the lowest sky. Here, the lowest, as-sama ad-dunya, it's meaning the nearest of the 7 heavens, because they were mentioned, 7 heavens were mentioned earlier, and now we're told the lowest of them, the nearest to the earth, has been adorned with stars. The lamps, the masabi, has been understood as referring to stars. and made them a means of stoning and pelting the Satans, the devils. And since in other passages in the Quran, it is mentioned that Satans try to steal information from the heavens, it has been interpreted as the angels, being God's carriers, deliver sacred information from the seven heavens to the earth, and the jinn and the Satan try to steal it in the sky. But when they try to steal it, the angels shoot at them, and some interpreted this to refer to the meteors or shooting stars as we see them. And so, for instance, some said that before the Quran was sent, the angels in the sky would be carrying this information to the people. Let's say some sacred information. And then the Satans would sit at the top of the sky and listen to what the angels said and try to give this information to soothsayers. But while doing so, they also mix it with lies. So you see this interpretation a lot in many of the classical commentaries. But when the Quran was sent to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, they say that God made the angels guard the skies, because that's what the ayah says, that they are guarded against Satans. And so God made the angels guard the skies, the heavens, and made the angels throw these fireballs in other passages in the Quran. They are al-najm al-thaqib, the piercing, burning stars, or burning fire at these Satans, to repel Satans and to keep the message safe. So they understood these passages to mean that God adorns the heaven, and protects it as well by making the stars means to repelling Satans. Okay, so more or less this is it. I summarized it. Now I'll share my humble understanding, inshallah, from what we've learned from the hikmah, the wisdom of the Quran so far. And we'll also see how these views do not actually contradict each other. We'll, inshallah, get there. And it's just that, as I mentioned earlier, I'm focusing on the message from my perspective as abd, as someone, a student of the Quran who wants to benefit from the Quran, something. I'm looking for guidance. So what is it telling me here and now as abd? How is my Rabb speaking to me? For what purpose? What is the message? So the ayah is, indeed, we have adorned the lowest heaven with lamps and have made them means to drive away Satans, and we have prepared for them the blazing punishment. And in actually the next ayah, in ayah 6, the disbelievers, the unbelievers are mentioned. So we keep that in mind too. So if you remember in ayah 3 and 4, I had mentioned how, in order to be able to see the perfection in the creation, because we were told to look again and again and see how the vision will come back to us tired and defeated, and we won't be able to find any gap in the creation, in the harmony and order and perfection and wholeness of the creation. So, and remember, we were asked to look repeatedly and also attentively, and realize that there is more to things than meets the eye, meaning that there are things underneath that are way more important, more significant than those things we get to see at first glance. And that was the goal of looking again and again, carefully focusing, contemplating. But if you remember, not only in this passage, but so far, every time I remind ourselves that without akhirah, without permanence, with the perfection becomes meaningless. If we see perfection, but without seeing anything beyond it, if we see things themselves as themselves only and nothing else, then even if we could find perfection, but then actually we can't, because the perfection would be limited, because many things will not make sense to us in that perception, that limited perception, which is actually limited to what meets the eye, what we see immediately. In that superficial perception, superficial, it does not, it could be someone is a scientist and knows a lot about the heavens, about astronomy and something, but his glance, his perception can still be superficial in the sense that he doesn't see the aspects that look to the maker, the creator, to the Rabb, doesn't see the rububiyah. Is just like things are happening themselves, that's it. I don't care where they're coming from and what's their meaning. And so with that, that's what I mean by superficial perception. In that perception, even if we see perfection, it is meaningless because there is no true future, because it is impermanent. And so blessings hurt. Actually, the better, the more we like the blessing, the more it hurts, because we want things we like to last. Otherwise, if it leaves us forever, then it becomes meaningless, purposeless, and that meaninglessness, that purposelessness hurts, and it's as if transforms everything into something that's, however superficially prettier and beautiful it is, it's actually ugly in its mortality, in its ephemerality, because we have been created with a longing for lasting meaning and purpose. And so transience cancels out meaning and beauty and perfection. Unless we use it, we understand it as the sign that it is, the ayah that it is, the ayah to permanence, because each thing in itself is transient, but the flow points to permanence. Each thing is impermanent, but the flow indicates permanence. And so in those two ayats, in ayah 3 and 4, that's what the look again, do you see any flow? Without that mindset, without that perspective, we will see flows. And we talked about, for instance, illness. And so it is when things are related, when we see the connection between things as they are coming from their Rabb and indicating their Rabb as signs, as ayat, that we can see beyond what first appears as a flow, that it is not a flow. And we talked about illness being bearing beautiful messages and meanings and teaching us about akhirah here and now, and getting us ready to find the source of healing rather than being healthy. How, even if I'm healthy 100%, so after I die, everything is over. And because when I'm healthy here and now, I have that fear of dying. If there is no akhirah, the fear of nothingness, of purposelessness, of the darkness of the future, then I cannot enjoy that health even here and now. Imam Nursi, rahimahullah, he calls it, he says it's like honey, but poisoned honey. And that's what is taught to us in the Quran as ayat, and also as wajh Allah, the face of God, the aspect of things and beings and events that look to God, to their Rabb, to their Maker. And that aspect is like a mirror reflecting the most beautiful names of God, al-Asma al-Husna. And that aspect is always beautiful. And because it looks to God, and because it looks to God, it looks to permanence, to eternity, it looks to akhirah. And so everything else is impermanent and transient, but the face of God, that aspect of things that look to God, to his beautiful names, is never perishes, as we are told in the Quran. وَلِلَّهِ الْمَشْرِقُ وَالْمَغْرِبُ فَأَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَاسِعٌ عَلِيمٌ. To God belong the east and the west, everything. And wherever you turn, there is the face of God. Subhanallah. And this, wajh Allah, is important. I try to mention it every here and now, so we get used to see how the Quran weaves all these concepts are interconnected, the shahada, the ayat, the glorification, the tasbihat of the creation. The beautiful names of God, they make the tasbihat of God by declaring his beautiful names, that they belong to him alone. For instance, there is no, we talked about water, the example of water and how it makes tasbih, it makes shahada, that there is no giver of life except God, except the only source of life, the only giver of life. Everything else, life is only borrowed, it's only gifted to us, and it's not ours. It can be taken any time. That's how we understand the rububiyyah as well. So in Surah Al-Qasas, for instance, Surah 28, Ayah 88, we are told, and never call upon any other deity besides God. There is no deity, nothing worth worshipping, loving, asking for help except him. Everything is bound to perish except his face. ولا تدع مع الله إلها آخر لا إله إلا هو كل شيء هالك إلا وجهه له الحكم وإليه ترجعون. With him rest all judgment, and unto him you shall be brought back. We are actually being brought back. And the more we realize that, the transience in our life, the more we realize how everything is transient around us, and therefore their perishing is also a sign pointing that he alone, the source alone, is permanent and unperishable. In Surah Al-Rahman, for instance, we are told, كُلُّ مَنْ عَلَيْهَا فَانٍ وَيَبْقَى وَجْهُ رَبِّكَ ذُو الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ. All that lives on it, whether it could be earth or heavens, is bound to pass away, but forever will remain the face of your sustainer, full of majesty and beneficence. Only the face of our Rabb remains. So we need to, we are told to actually seek wajh Allah. In Surah Al-Layl, Surah 92, which we did study together at one point in time, we are told that distance from who is distant from hellfire? The truly God conscious shall remain distant from hellfire. He who spends his possessions so that he might grow in purity, not as payment for favor received, but only out of a longing for the face of his sustainer. إِلَّا ابْتِغَاءَ وَجْهِ رَبِّهِ الْأَعْلَى, the all highest. And such indeed shall be in time well pleased. وَلَسَوْفَ يَرْضَى. Subhanallah. So only those who act out of a longing for the face of their Rabb, the all highest, those will be well pleased, and those will remain distant from the hellfire. But these people are conscious of God. They are conscious of God because nothing is an obstacle to seeing the rububiyyah. On the contrary, everything going on in the creation around, within them, around them, is actually a sign, an ayah bearing witness to his rububiyyah, mirroring his beautiful divine name. So things, events are not veiling us from God, but revealing him to us. And that's why we're told to spend only out of a longing for God. وَمَا تُنْفِقُونَ إِلَّا ابْتِغَاءَ وَجْهِ اللَّهِ. This ibtigha, this longing for the face of God. They spend only out of a longing for the face of God. And we're told there is barakah, there is a blessing in seeking the face of God in what we do. So we're told, give his due to the near of kin as well as to the needy and the wayfarer. This is best for all who seek the face of God, for it is they that shall attain to a happy state. Happy state here is the falah. This falah is, it has blessing, it bears fruit in this world and in the next. So do all these things as a means to seek the face of God. And we, many times, we saw how we give for the sake of seeking the face of God in the giving, for instance, in the receiving as well. This is in Surah Al-Rum, which is Surah 30, Ayah 38. And in Ayah 39, we're told, and remember, whatever you may give out in usury so that it might increase through other people's possessions will bring you no increase in the sight of God. Where people use interest, they think that their money is increasing. We're told, no, it won't increase. There's no barakah in interest because you're actually siphoning from other people's labor. You're exploiting other people. Money doesn't make money, only labor. So you have to, or a gift from God, from if you are a farmer or something. But money sitting there doesn't make babies. And whereas it says so, there is no increase in usury, in interest. Whereas all that you give out in charity, seeking the face of God, for will be blessed by him. So it's the opposite. We think when we are giving, something is decreasing from my wealth if I'm sharing, giving some of it. But for the muhsin who gives seeking the face of God, he's aware, if he's seeing and witnessing the face of God in that act of giving, then he will see, he will be in touch, connected to the abundant, endless source of barakah, source of giving. And so giving in charity will be only an expression of confirming that reality. And so it doesn't feel like something decreased because I'm not giving out of my wealth, but I'm giving out of what is given and what is being given to me and all the time. And that's why we're told then, whereas all that you give out in charity, seeking the face of God, will be blessed by him, for it is they who, meaning those who seek the face of God, that shall have their reward multiplied. So you give, but because you give charity, seeking the face of God, the reward is multiplied. You take from people, but because you are exploiting them, and like it's a legal way of stealing, actually, then it actually is, there's no increase, no barakah. Subhanallah. So the creation's outer aspect is called Mulk, and the inner aspect is called Malakut. And the Mulk, think of them as two sides of the same coin. And the Malakut side is what reflects the beautiful divine names. And so actually, if you have noticed, in order to confirm the message of the Quran, we always look at that inner side, that Malakut aspect of things, the ayah aspect of things, the aspect of things that the face of, that looks to the face of God. And if you remember the first ayah, تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير, blessed is he whose hand rests all mulk, all sovereignty. And he is all powerful over all things. So if you remember, we said that Tabaraka, why do we confirm Tabaraka, that yes, blessed, he is the source of all blessings, all things good, all things we long for, because all sovereignty, all mulk, all dominion belong to him alone. And how do we know? How can we verify this? Because he alone has power and control over all things. And this is something that we can observe in the creation. So to confirm the message of Ayah 1, what we needed was to look at his as the creation and observe how things, events, being reflect power, indicate one single source of power, how everything is an ayah, a sign bearing messages from the unseen, about the unseen, how they reflect the beautiful divine names, like in this case, Qadir, he's all powerful, and afterwards it was Aziz, he is almighty. So actually this is what we do all the time. We look at the mulk and the outer aspect, in order to find the inner aspect, the malakut that looks to the face of God. We are seeking the face of God in everything. We're seeking the aspect that looks to the beautiful divine names. And in order to do that, we have to become aware how things function as ayat. And while we are doing this, I give examples. I gave examples of water many times, for instance, and how for instance, in the lifelessness of water, through its lifelessness, it's reflecting. So lifeless water, we see water. When we look carefully, we realize that it's lifeless, it's blind, and that lifelessness is acting, the lifeless water interacting with things, and seemingly life is being given through it, the interaction, the dynamic interaction and interconnection between these two events, lifelessness and the production of life, is an area pointing, indicating the source of life. That's the malakut aspect. And so it's like, to give a simple example, I also from time to time give this example because it's simple and it's only to start with. Think of writing. It's not only shapes and ink on paper. The shapes are vessels to meanings. They are signs, they are symbols bearing messages from their author. It's the same with the creation. They are signs, symbols bearing messages from their Rabb, their creator, their maker. And in order to see the Malakut aspect of creation, we need to look carefully, repeatedly, attentively. We need to reflect, listen, wait to be inspired, for the meanings to be gifted to us, because we don't know. We seek the guidance. And then we realize that there is so much more to what's out there than meets the eye. For instance, human beings are not simple flesh and bones. If we had an alien from another, let's say another galaxy, and came and thought that, analyzed, studied human beings, and looked at, okay, this is flesh and bones, we would laugh, because it's part of who we are, but we're not only that, actually. The body, the physical body, is constantly changing. It's like a vessel to the heart, to the ruh, to who we truly are. And the same is true for all matter, for all beings, for all things. Matter is constantly changing. It is a means to convey meanings. It's like the ink and the shapes on the paper. They are means to convey meanings. So being cannot be reduced, beings, things, cannot be reduced to their physical constituents. Adornment, art, is not color plus form. It's much more. It's not canvas and paint, for instance. It's much more. It involves beauty, something that only conscious beings can appreciate. Something that we cannot describe rationally, something it has to be experienced. It brings us happiness and joy, yet it can't be explained away like food or air. People can, who don't want to accept the Malakut, who insist in ignoring the Malakut, ignoring that something beyond is happening, something is beyond what we see is going on, much bigger, that what we see is only the tip of the iceberg. Those who insist in that denial, they can explain food or air as necessary for life. Either if it was not there, we wouldn't be living anyway, as if, well, to me it's not an explanation, but people think it's an explanation. But for instance, with beauty, you can't do that, because, I mean, we don't need it to live, to survive, to subsist in life, yet it's there, and it's something that we appreciate. That's something that brings us joy. Why? How? That's also something to reflect, something to go again and again and reflect about. Back to matter, Imam Badiu'Zzaman Said Nursi, starting on his treatise on angels, on malaika. You see, these words are all related: mulk, malakut, malaika. Malaika is angels. So malakut is sometimes translated as dominion, sovereignty, but so is mulk. But malakut in the Islamic tradition has something to do with the angelic world. I'll come back to it, inshallah. So Imam Nursi, rahimahullah, when he start his treatise on angels, he states that, he says, matter is not the kernel, it's not the fundament, it's not a settled abode so that events and perfection may be affixed, attributed to it, or constructed on it. Rather, it is a shell prepared to split, rent, dissolve. It is a husk, it is froth, it is a form. And we can understand this just by reflecting on our body, how it's changing constantly. Subhanallah. He also adds that, he says, matter is not essential so that existence may be made subject to it and be dependent on it. Rather, matter subsists through a meaning, and that meaning is life, it is spirit. Also, as may be established through observation, matter is not the thing served so that everything may be ascribed to it. It is rather the servant. It renders service to the process of the perfection of a truth, and that truth is life, and the fundament of that truth is spirit. Also ruh, and also, as is self-evident, matter is not dominant so that recourse may be made to it, so that we may have recourse to it, or perfection sought from it. Rather, it is dominated. It looks to the decree of some fundament. It is in motion in the way that the decree dictates. And that fundament is life, it is ruh, it is consciousness. And we can understand from our own being, and also from the way we use matter in writing, in art. The matter is there to serve a purpose, a meaning. It is not itself the purpose, the goal. And for any living being, if you have a bird that just died in a second after it dies, everything is the same physically. The body is there, everything is there, but there is no, it's just a corpse. There is no bird. It doesn't fly, it doesn't communicate, it does not. So that body, that matter, was serving something, a meaning, which is life. It's not the other way around. It is, and this is important because I'll give you an example. There is an interesting hadith on Mount Uhud. And in this hadith, it is reported that the Prophet ﷺ said, Inna Uhudan Jabalun yuhibbuna wa nuhibbuhu. Truly, the mountain of Uhud loves us and we love it. And there is this inna, like truly, verily, emphasized. Now that we love Uhud, we think that we get it, we understand. We love, okay, you may love it. How about Uhud loves us? Uhud, the mountain, loves us. Now, to the mindless ghafil, he looks at perceives the universe very much like the disbeliever. There are no ayat. They're stuck in the mulk, in the what they see superficially. And so it doesn't make sense. How can a mountain, which in the perception of the ghafil is unconscious rock, love us? It's just nonsense. It seems to not make sense. But to the mindful, to the muhsin, the mountain is much more than just rock. Just as human beings are much more than their physical being. Actually, the physical being is like the tip of the iceberg as far as each human being is a huge world. Their thoughts, their feelings, their so many things, their memories, So the mindful, the muhsin, doesn't identify with the physical body consciously. Well, the ghafil, the mindless, doesn't identify with anything consciously. It's all done unconsciously, stuck in the superficial mulk aspect of things. But to the mindful, the muhsin, the mountain, Uhud, or any mountain actually, any being is much more than just a rock, than just matter. Just as human beings are much more than their physical bodies, or a piece of art is much more than the canvas and the paint. And so just like human beings have hearts and souls, all beings have melekut, their melekut aspect, their angelic side. And so when we interact with the rest of the creation, with the rest of the world. Matter interacts with matter, but the meaning, the beauty, the taste, the joy, the happiness, we perceive them through our heart and soul. We appreciate the beauty through our heart and soul. It's not just the shapes, it's not just the paint and the canvas. And what conveys those meanings to us are in the angels. There is something else out there. The Uhud, the mountain, is not just rock. There are mountains that they manifest glory, jalal, and jamal, and beauty. And we feel at awe in front of a mountain. And if you lived by a mountain long enough, you may not realize, but when you go away and after a while you come back, you feel that you missed the mountain, that the mountain was a presence, something, there was a meaning there. It was not just as we do without realizing, just rock. No, it's something that we interact with, that our ruh, our heart and soul interacts with. It interacts not with the rock, but with the malakut, the angelic aspect of things, that aspect that carries the meaning of glory, the meaning of beauty, that are reflections of the divine, the most beautiful divine names, al-Asma al-Husna. So we perceive those meanings, the meanings of those beautiful names through our hearts, through our souls. And what conveys those meanings to us are the angels. And so in one place, in one treatise, Ustad Nursi rahimahullah, he says of the disbeliever and the heedless, he says, for them, they perceive beings like the mountains and oceans, like horrendous, lifeless corpses. They're just like matter, just like nothing else. But for the believer, the muhsin, they are making tasbihat. Actually, you start hearing and understanding their glorification of God with his beautiful names, and the muhsins participate in those glorification. So they are aware that it's not only I love something, but it's a mutual. There is no I love something and the thing has nothing to do with me. If I love it, it means it's mutual. But in the mind, in the perception of the mindless, of the ghafil, it's so self-centered, so selfish, so just about me. I like and I don't like. That's not really the love that the Prophet ﷺ is talking about here. It's just I want it, I need it, and if for any reason I don't like it, I don't even respect it. I throw it away. That's not true. The love that the Prophet ﷺ is talking about here. This is a love that goes back. We love it. It loves us. And through that love, we get to realize that we are all creatures of our Rabb, and we get to love our Rabb and get to know our Rabb, and our Iman increases, and therefore our Ihsan also increases, inshallah, if we are willing from the beginning to surrender. The surrendering is the beginning, because the surrendering is a choice that we make. And afterwards, then the blessings, the hikmah, the wisdom is a gift to those who are willing to surrender and do the work accordingly. For instance, look again and again, reflect, focus. That's resurrendering. It's not surrendering means I surrender, I do, I obey, I do exactly, I follow the guidance. So I won't talk more about angels, but about the malakut aspect of the creation, because we can only appreciate angels to the extent we appreciate the malakut. So for me, talking about angels, it seems like someone who doesn't know still what functions in algebra is, and we're talking about higher algebra, when we don't even know the basics. Without, if someone cannot appreciate the malakut, then we can't really appreciate the angels. And belief in the angels is part of the pillars of Iman. Let's keep that in mind. So this is important. And that is possible. To appreciate the malakut is possible to the extent that we identify and live from the heart and soul. When we are living mindlessly in ghafla, we are not identifying consciously with the ego, with the false ego, with the false sense of reality, but that's how we act. That's how we live. And we live as if things are only what we see superficially. They are not yet in that in that life perception, in that worldview, let's say. But for the muhsin, those who identify with the heart and soul and live therefore from the heart or soul, then everything is an ayah. They are, the more I am in touch with my heart and soul, the more I am aware that what I am interacting with is not just the matter, it's not just a rock, Uhud, or a mountain is not just a rock, but there are meanings there. Those meanings are reflecting beautiful divine names. For instance, beauty, Jamal, God is beautiful. So think about it. For instance, there are many ways of reflecting on this point, but the easiest is to reflect on our own beings. Like, can human beings be reduced to their physical bodies? Because that's what we do to the creation. We think, we don't say it, but we act as if a tree is wood and some matter. No, wood, it's much more. There is life there. There is something going on there. There are so many names being displayed there, so beautiful divine names displayed there. There are angels carrying those meanings, there. So just like we are not flesh and bones, but we have hearts and souls, they are not just matter, just wood, just branches, they have an angelic side to them, and it's the ruh in us that is interacting and receiving and communicating with the malakut in the creation. So human beings cannot be reduced to their physical bodies, because there is much more to being a human than the physical body, and so we experience emotions, we experience feeling, but what is much more significant than this is that we are awareness, conscious. We are aware of our bodies, we are aware of our thoughts, our feelings. We are mindful, conscious beings. So what is it in us that is conscious of the rest of what constitutes us? We are not the sum of our constituents. And how sensible would it be for us to identify merely with our physicality or with our thoughts and feelings, when most of what makes us humans cannot be touched, cannot be seen or experienced with the five senses only? Something that's consciousness, something that's much wider. And that's why we need the reflection again and again. Look again and again. Reflect carefully, attentively. And strangely, the palpable aspect of humans, like the body, they undergo constant changes from babyhood through adulthood. And so do our thoughts, and so do our emotions. They change continually. However, we cannot identify with something that keeps changing. So who are we then? Who am I? Who sees when I see? Who speaks? Who hears? Who understands and communicates? These are questions that, when we look at the tradition, people asked. The muhsins, the people, the friends of God, they asked these questions. Who sees when I see? Who hears when I hear? Who in me becomes happy or sad in response to a mere word? Who is asking these questions? Who is aware of them? Who is aware of the world out there and of my relationship to it? Subhanallah. So the more we start reflecting on these issues, the more how we view ourselves, how we live our life is going to change and transform. And so how we perceive things out there is going to also change and transform accordingly, because we see things in our image, in our mirror. And also Ayah 5 mentions the adornment of the heavens rather than its benefits, for instance, because in other parts in the Quran we talked about the benefits, but here it's adornment. Adornment is a sign that it's not the result of coincidence. It's a sign to purposeful creation. Adornment calls to the heart. We love beauty. And so it's harder to explain it away with unconscious causes, as the shirki perceptions tend to do. We often explain things with causes. It happened, this happened because of this. And especially, as I mentioned before, like there are living beings on earth. You say there is air, so air is an ayah. Some people say, no, if there were no air, there would be no life. So there were many universes, and the one with an atmosphere like this, with the right conditions for life, is the one that bears life. That's it. How can you do this with adornment, with beauty? It's a little bit harder to do, to explain away, because it doesn't look to reason, but more to the heart. Does air and benefits look to reason alone? No, but some people may, ignore that side. But here, that's all. It all looks to the heart only. So when we tune in our observation to the conscious soul within us, and we acknowledge it, and we become more and more aware of it, then we become more and more open to seeing the world that way. We start seeing those dimensions in the world. We'll start seeing those, the consciousness, the malakut, the angelic aspect of beings that indicate the unseen, pertain to the unseen, that things are not happening haphazardly. Something intelligent, something is happening consciously. Water is entering all kinds of animals and tissues and plants and everything, and acting consciously. It can't be happening by haphazardly, and it can't be doing it itself. It is the angels, obey the order, the commands, and they carry the throne of God. So they be and it is. They are the result of be and it is. And so it's clear that water is acting in the name of its maker at the command. It's being employed. It can't know or do anything on its own. But we can only know that when we start seeing the consciousness, the meaningfulness of what's going on, the miraculousness. I mean, it's like the knowledge that is needed for water to be acting in all kinds of animal beings, human beings, plants, inanimate things. It's just, you just make sajda, you just prostrate. Either this water is God itself, or it is acting at the command of God, the Rabb, the Sovereign, the Almighty, who has the Mulk. And then we can confirm that the Mulk belongs to him alone, that everything is under his control. But we can only do this to the extent that we tune in with the conscious soul within us. And so we become aware of the malakut, the angelic aspect of things out there. And so we realize that just as the physical aspects of human beings interact with the physical aspects of the world, their conscious spiritual being interacts with the spiritual malakut dimension of things. And in the Quran, what's emphasized again and again is the importance of understanding creational signs, the signs in the creation. And we are repeatedly told that in all things in the heavens and on earth, there are signs. We're warned to not ignore them. And by analogy, to think of, you remember the letters of writing? Like if someone thinks of letters as mere shapes, as shapes only, they would miss the true purpose of the true meaning of the message. And so it is with the true purpose of the creation. Unless we are aware that they are signs, that they carry an angelic side, that there is angels are conveying messages from the unseen, we would miss the true purpose of their creation and our creation. As we saw in Ayah 2, the creation of the heavens and earth are related to our creation. And so when we read words, we discern the meaning that emerges from specific arrangements of letters, words, sentences. And in the same way, reading the creational beings, the signs in the creation, the beings and phenomena and events and things, involves contemplating. That's why we need to look again and again attentively. And we start realizing the relationship between the various beings and things and events, and how they're ordered, how they're related, and contextualized with one another. And that gives rise to the meaning that they convey, like writing. So when we see a rain as a sign, as an ayah, we see it within the context of other signs, the orbits of the moon and the earth, the alternation of night and day, the growth of various plants, the food we and animals need and eat. So we see rain not just as water falling from the clouds or from the sky, but as a phenomenon elegantly intertwined with the movement of the motion of celestial bodies, and also with the life and the landscapes of the earth. Subhanallah, tabarakallahu ahsan al-khaliqin. And this way we learn what it means to be conscious of the signs around us, to be mindful of the signs around us, to live with ihsan as muhsin, to see the face of God in everything. Wherever you turn, there is the face of God. Wherever we turn, we will find the face of God. And we'll begin to see how every living being is connected to the rest of the universe in beautiful ways that reveal different, various, beautiful manifestations of the beautiful divine names. And so like us, each being, we realize, is dependent on the earth, on water, on air, on sunlight, on the seasons, on the laws of physics, chemistry, and add-on. And each being, like a flower, for instance, can only exist along with the whole universe. So if the whole world, the whole universe had expanded too fast, if ancient stars had not died and yielded their dust, if the earth were not just this particular distance from the sun, if we didn't have this atmosphere with this particular size, a single flower would not exist. Beings would not exist. There would be no life. In other words, for one thing to be, the whole universe must have come to be just as it is. This is, there are many arguments that Imam Nursi brings to, and one of them is this, and he backs them up with many verses from the Quran. Actually, they come up as commentaries on various verses from the Quran, and we did see them in the past within the context of various ayat, like in Surah Al-Ra'd and others as well. And the whole thing is, again, the contrast. Everything, for one thing to be, the whole universe must be there, yet nothing in the universe, not the earth, not the water, not the air, not the sun, has the knowledge. None of them has the power to control its own existence or to coordinate its processes or its relationship with the other beings or to sustain itself. So we have these two sides of the argument. None of them possesses the ability to create life, for instance, or bring a rose into being or sustain it. Even an already created rose, they cannot sustain it in existence. They cannot sustain themselves. They are themselves, as we are told in the Quran, لا يخلقون شيئا وهم يخلقون. They cannot create or sustain anything because they themselves are being created and sustained. And so all these beings are in the same position as us. They are all needing the rububiyyah, and as such they are all indicating and declaring and the rububiyyah and glorifying God with his many different beautiful names, such as he only has all the knowledge, he has the power, he has the control, he is the mighty, etc., etc. And it is in this way, through the combination of their powerlessness and intricacy, that each being declares that its maker, its Rabb, can be none than the maker of the whole universe. So they're our very mode, because it's not only them, but human beings as well, all of us, our very mode of existence, our very helplessness, our very neediness for being sustained all the time, 24/7, constantly, always, points to a transcendent maker, points to his artistry, his whatever the names of God, the beautiful Asma Husna you can think of. And so they are like speaking of him, glorifying him, testifying to his oneness, making shahada. That's what it means, that they are signs. They are signs indicating the divine names. They are reflecting the face of God, and their very being serves as testimony, as shahada. That's why the world is called Alam al-Shahada, the world of witnessing, of testimony in the Quran. They testify to the existence of the all-knowing, all-powerful giver of life, and at the same time they are glorifying him. They are declaring his names, that you see beauty in me, it's not mine, all beauty is his. That's the glorification, the tasbih. So the fact that adornment is mentioned is interesting because, as I said in other passages, benefits are mentioned. For instance, in Surah Al-Anbiya, Surah 21, ayah 32 and 33, we are told, and we have set up the sky as a canopy well secure, and yet they stubbornly turn away from the signs of this creation. And they fail to see that it is He who has created the night and the day and the sun and the moon, all of them floating through space. So there, the sky is like a canopy well secured. Air doesn't go away because it is made in such a way that it's trapped in the atmosphere around the earth. And that's the way we can have water, air, and that life is sustained. Because, when we think of the heavens, especially the lowest heaven, or the, you can call it sky, it's not something out there. I just mentioned everything is interconnected. The sky is full of ayat of divine barakah, blessing, of rahmah, of mercy, of qudra, of power, of izzah, of mightiness. Water comes to us from the sky. Light, air come from the sky. Actually, only earth is here. Without the sky, earth won't be the earth as we know it, but we take it for granted. We tend to forget that they are so much intertwined. So when we think of the sky, it's not something that has nothing to do with us. It's not only the stars, even those stars are actually related to how things are on the earth. They are all very much interrelated. And so like in this passage, when we are told that the sky is made as a canopy well secured, the believer, the muhsin, reflects on this, goes out, looks again and again, reflects until they start seeing all the benefits of the sky being created as a canopy well secured, and how, for instance, the benefit of the atmosphere in nurturing life. And so they glorify their Rabb when they hear this. They see it as an evidence of rububiyyah. Especially in ayah 33 here, he says, He who has created the night and the day, and the sun and the moon, all of them floating through space. So when we are talking about space and about heaven, I think that even the earth is traveling in this space. The earth is, the moon, the sun, and the sun and the moon, we are told again and again, are ayat that reminds us of the tremendous creative power that sustained them in orderly motions. And they also remind us of the passage of time, of transience, day and night, etc. etc. So many things to reflect. However, for the unbeliever and the mindless, the ghafil, who just doesn't think, there is God, but has nothing to do with me. I prayed my 5 times prayer in between as if I'm not a abd, forget about it, or never actually understood what it meant to be a abd. Often, we are not taught this thing. Tell the truth. It's not something that's taught to us everywhere. So the unbelievers and the mindless, the ghafil, people who live in ghafla, even though they think they believe they are believers, they often explain away the benefits sent to us from the sky with blind, unconscious causes that are themselves created, that are themselves in need of being sustained. We explain things with things. And some even want to explain away the whole universe. They claim that many universes somehow, magically, don't know how, they don't care about how, but they said there were many that came into existence. And why are we in this particular one and everything works so perfectly? Well, because this particular one precisely allows for human life, and that's why There are human beings, that's it. Like even a kid, a small child, will find this very unreasonable. And they don't care because they think they are busy living their life. But when it comes to adornment, there is no need for, you can't say it's there because without it there is no life. So if it was not there, there wouldn't be life, we wouldn't be here to see it. I mean, it's inversing everything and it doesn't make sense. But some people think they can get away with this foolish, whatever, they call it reasoning. But when it comes to adornment, we don't need it in order for us to survive or for life to subsist. So the disbelievers have no explanation for it. And so does the shaitan within us. We talked about the shaitan within us, I won't go there, but that part of us that is inclined to fall into ghafla, that's inclined to refuse to surrender. That shaitan, when it comes to adornment, it's much more, because it speaks to the heart directly. Like shortcuts the reason that works with the ego and that wants to explain things with other things. And so for the believer, even if we're in ghafla, if we take this seriously, then it's going to be rujuman lishayatin, that Satan within us will be like driven away, repelled, like we have nothing to say before this sign, the adornment, the sign to Jamal within Jalal, this beauty within glory, especially when you look at the stars at the heavens. And it's beauty within glory and glory within beauty, subhanallah. So it's easier to surrender unless someone is stubborn in refusing to surrender. And so we're also reminded of our size, our vulnerability. It's a humbling experience, except for the arrogant again, who choose to follow Satan. Remember, Satan, shaitan in Arabic, it's derived from shatana, and the verb means means to become remote, distant. And it's understood as to be remote or distant from the truth, from haqq. And so instead of surrendering to their reality of being sustained here and now, to the reality of their powerlessness and helplessness, if someone wants to ignore that reality, what they are doing is following shaitan, which we are told in the Quran again and again that he is an obvious, clear enemy, a foe to us, aduwwun mubin. And as such, adornment in the sky, like the constellations are in motion, they're ordered to fulfill particular purposes, yet they are pleasing to the eye, they're sparkly, they are bright, the constellations have particular shapes, and you can carry on. And through the telescope, they display amazing colors and shapes. So you only say, MashaAllah, Tabarakallahu, Ahsan al-Khaliqeen. Blessed be God, the best of creators. And so this is like throwing stones at anyone who claims all this is happening by itself, or they evolved randomly, or try to explain it away with blind causes and forces. And so at the end, the malakut of things in this case, the malakut of the heavens, adorned with lamps, is like a missile to the possible whisperings of Satan. I will leave it here. Now, I'm not going into the details because it becomes more and more difficult to explain, and we will need lots of time. It's not something we can do online. But inshallah, these are food to reflect on. It's not the end, inshallah. For us, it's the beginning. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم من الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه اللهم أنت ربي لا إله إلا أنت خلقتني وأنا عبدك وأنا على عهدك ووعدك ما استطعت أعوذ بك من شر ما صنعت أبوء لك بنعمتك علي وأبوء بذنبي فاغفر لي فإنه لا يغفر الذنوب إلا أنت آمين والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.
Jazakumullah khair, Sister Yamina. Is there anybody who would like to ask a question? There was a question earlier, almost an hour ago, I think from Yosa. Would you like to tell the question orally, or shall I read the chat? Yosa, are you there?
Yes, assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Yes, I guess my humble question was just, I wasn't clear if I understood clearly. That's why I was wondering if Dr. Yamina could just maybe answer my question about, she mentioned that a believer will, and I'm just paraphrasing, will give charity to seek for the face of Allah, for the longing of Allah. And I have heard a lot of times giving charity for the sake of Allah. I was just wondering if that is the same concept or not, and I guess what it is then, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the question. They're related.
Mm-hmm.
They're related. I mean, if we seek the face of God in everything, then we will be able, inshallah, to give for the sake of God, to give in the name of God. And the act of giving will also display the face of God, and only then will we be able to perform the giving for the sake of God. So we may say that there are degrees because it depends on the understanding and the awareness of the person, the level of ihsan, the level of iman, and therefore the level of ihsan of the person doing it. But it has to see when we seek the face of God, we start being aware of the reflection of the divine names in everything. And so in my giving also, I will be able to witness and testify the giver in me, that it's not me who is the giving, but someone is giving through me. And so instead of, because we could be, when we are unaware, I could be claiming that I am giving for the sake of God. My intention may be that, but because I'm unaware, part of me is still claiming ownership of the giving. Maybe some people even claim ownership of what is given, of the gift. But some people may become aware that the gift was given to me as well, so it's not truly mine, but the giving, it's me. I am the giver, and it feels good. Actually, what feels good is because the name giver and provider and helper are beautiful, they feel good to the heart, to the human soul. But then I miss the aspect that looks to the beautiful names of God there, and I missed the aspect that look to akhirah there, and so there will be a disconnection. So often people will say, I am giving for the sake of God, and I am expecting God to give me in akhirah. And it seems like these two things are unconnected, and it is a hope. There's no way I can confirm that God will give me in akhirah. I'm just hoping. But when I see the face of God in the giving, when I see that the gift is given from God, and the compassion for me to give the charity is a gift from God, suddenly I feel filled with compassion. It is going through me, and I observe it and I witness it. I become the witness, and I say that He's the compassionate. When I'm acting compassionate, I'm just surrendering to the call of the compassionate. So I do not appropriate it to myself. I'm acting compassionate. God said, act compassionate, and I am compassionate, as if there is no bridge between the two. And I can never know God. I can never witness truly and confirm that truly He is the compassionate, because it feels like I am the one giving, I am the one showing compassion. But for the muhsin, the one who seeks the face of God, he sees the face of God in the giving, that God is the helper. The urge to help is a gift to me. It's not mine. I didn't buy it anywhere, because I am not unaware, unconscious. I do not identify with whatever is given to me. I'm given some knowledge. I am the source of knowledge. No. I am given life, and life is not mine. Life is reflecting the giver of life, reminding me of the giver of life. And it just takes a few minutes of breathing and witnessing that life is being breathed into me here and now. And then I stop claiming that I'm alive, life, as if life is from me. And I witness that He alone is alive. And I see the face of God as the source of life, the giver of life, in that reflection, in that observation, in that witnessing. I do the same with the names compassionate, with the giver, with the helper. And then not only I witness that He alone is the helper, and there is also the good news in the helping. The one who is helping someone I don't know in the street or somewhere in the other side of the planet through me is the one who helps everyone. And tomorrow when I am in need, there is no need to be sad or to be anxious, because I know that He helps. Just as He helped someone through me, He will help through I don't know what means, but He is the helper, He's the compassionate. And after I die, I also have no fear and anxiety, as we are told in the Quran, لا خوف عليهم ولا يحزنون. Why? Because He is the compassionate, the helper, the giver. So just as He is the giver here, He's the giver always, after death, in this world, or wherever I am. And so I witness and confirm that message, and it is good news for me, not only in this world, but in akhirah. And so the two things are not that I give here and God, I'm hoping that God will give me in akhirah, are not two unconnected, disconnected hopes for me. They are my reality. I see them, I witness them here and now, and that's why muhsins like Imam Ali radiallahu anh says, even if the veils were lifted, my iman won't increase, because he sees, there is even a dua like show me the reality as it is, because he sees the malakut, the reality of things as it is here and now. I don't know if I could explain the connection between the two. So the seeking of the face of God is key to be able to act for the sake of God, in the name of God, inshallah. And it is related to the shahada, making the shahada in that action, in that act, and to well, I had something in my mind, but it left. It's not from me. Anyways, hopefully, inshallah, you understood something. Was it okay?
Yes, Jazakallah khair. That was very helpful, Dr. Yamina.
You're welcome. Alhamdulillah.
Jazakallah khair. I also think we had a teleconference, a full session on this, but I can't recall which one it was. But I'll try to look it up and inshallah share it next time. And one thing I wanted to share, Dr. Yamina, when you were talking about how adornment is another layer of indication, even a stronger indication to God. One thing that came to my mind is peacock, and how beautiful it is. And when you look at it, you feel like, this beauty cannot be explained away just by survival, this and that. Nothing. I mean, even the claw cannot be explained with those stuff. But
there it's like
on top of that, if you have that, yes.
Yeah, there it's really like stoning the shaitan, and how would you say, Sister Mark? Like shutting it
up, or
yeah, let's say that way.
Yeah. So beauty speaks even in a
powerful way,
wavelength, if you will, about the transcendent, about the source of creation, the creator. And then when you say it stones the Satan, it really connects with that verse as well, right? That that these beautiful things brings us back to that notion that you've been sharing, that beauty is stoning Satan, the whisperings, the false whisperings about the world. And beauty adds another layer of defense. Inshallah. Are there any comments, questions? Okay. In that case, we will stop here. Jazakumullah khair, Dr. Yamina, may Allah bless you. And Jazakumullah khair, everyone, for joining us tonight. And if you haven't registered for the retreat, we still have space. Please do so soon.